Over the last 9 years, my team and I have sold over 1,600 homes and over $900 million worth of real estate. And in this video today, I'm going to hand you the most important things I've learned across all those transactions. Let's get right into it. Lesson number one, lead conversion is the whole game. If you can't convert people from a conversation to an appointment, nothing else matters. You can have the best listing presentation in the world, but if you're not getting face-to-face with people, you're not going to become a top producer. The best agents know what to say, they know how to say it, and they can read the other person well enough to connect on a human-to-human level. This is not about reading a script like some kind of robot. It's about being so good on the phone that the other person feels like they'd be financially reckless and irresponsible to not meet with you. And that skill alone will take you further than almost anything else that you can possibly work on. Lesson number two, until they've signed, you've not actually closed them. They're not really your client. And I've seen agents do everything right in a listing appointment and then ask for the business. They walk out feeling really good about how the listing appointment went, and then they don't get the listing because someone else asked them to sign and they didn't. So you got to get comfortable closing people, and it's not optional. It's something you have to do. You have to try to close people when you're face to face with them. It should feel like the obvious, logical next step in the conversation and the process that you're already having. And if it feels awkward, that's kind of a signal that you haven't built enough value in the appointment yet. Work backwards from there. Like, it should just be the next logical step in what you're doing. They're going to wonder, what's the next step? Well, your job is to tell them the next step is to sign and start the process of working together. It's that simple. Lesson three, your CMA is only as good as the context around it. Handing someone a printout of numbers doesn't tell them anything they couldn't get from Zillow on their own. What they actually need is the story around those numbers. And what I found works really well is including color photos of every comp in my CMA. We use Cloud CMA. It makes this very, very easy, but this allows them to see the actual condition of those homes and compare them to their own. This is very important. The data tells them what their home is worth, but the photos show them why, and that makes it a completely different conversation. Top price requires top condition. I always tell my clients that, and they can see it in the photos of the comps. So we need to break the comps down into three distinctive categories as well. We got to break them down to sold, pending, and active, and explain what each of these mean to the seller. I like to explain it this way. The solds are like the rear view mirror on where the market has been. The pendings are more recent data on where it's been most recently and in the last couple of weeks. And then actives are like our actual competition, meaning if a buyer comes and looks at your home, they're also going to go tour these other properties and then compare to make their decision. We need to stand out both in presentation and price from the actives. That's the whole job. That's the whole mission we're going on. Lesson number four, do not finalize the price at the first appointment. This one took me a while to figure out, and I still see a lot of agents make this mistake. Early on, I thought that I need to nail the price down right there on the spot, but the market is really dynamic, and things change between when you first meet a seller and when you actually go live. Sometimes that period could be several months, and the market could be completely different over that period of time. What I do now is I establish a floor and a ceiling at the first meeting, and I get an agreement on the range. And then the final 48 hours before I hit the market, once I can see the photos, once I can see the staging, once I can see all the work they did on their house or didn't do, and the condition of the home after the prep, I do one more market update, and that's where we really hone that number in, and we get exactly where we're going to come on the market at. It produces better pricing decisions, and it keeps the seller bought in all the way through the process. They know they have to do all these things that we ask them to do if they want to get that top number, because we're going to look at it before it comes live to the market. Lesson number five, top price is not always the most important thing to a seller. This is the assumption that burns agents over and over again. You walk in, and I've done this as well, assuming the seller wants the highest possible number above everything else. So you tell them what they want to hear on price to win the listing, and then you're stuck. We really call this buying the listing in real estate. It's not where you want to be, and it's really unethical. But the reality is some sellers care more about timing than price. Some care about certainty of close, and some just don't want strangers walking through their house for 6 weekends or 6 months in a row while they're holding out for this high number. The only way you actually find out what matters to this specific person is by asking them before you pitch anything. Because if you go straight into your presentation with the wrong assumption, you're solving a problem that they don't actually have, that they haven't named. That gets me to lesson number 6. Buyers shop by comparison. I just said this a couple minutes ago. This is the simplest pricing lesson I know, and it's the one that I come back to with every seller who wants to push the number too high. If your home is priced above other similar homes in that buyer's area of consideration, they're simply going to move on to the next one and put an offer in on that house. You don't lose them dramatically, you just never hear from them. And by the time you figure out what happened, the days on market have already started working against you. Meanwhile, your active competition is going under contract and ultimately closing, getting cash in the bank. So don't fall for the trap of telling yourself that they can simply offer less than what you're asking. That's not the way that it works necessarily. Buyers instead, they just dismiss your listing and move on to the next one if they perceive it to be overpriced, starting a negotiation with a seller that they think is actually serious about selling. So your price is sending a message about if you really want to sell your house or if you're just testing the water. And buyers know this. Lesson number 7, don't negotiate your commission. I don't do it, and I state that very clearly when it comes up. If a seller tells me another agent will do it for less, I don't argue the philosophy of agent value. Instead, I compare marketing plans, track records, and what they're actually getting for the lower number. And I remind them that for most of my clients, their home is their single most valuable asset they have, and most of them want really aggressive representation from someone who's done this hundreds and hundreds of times. They don't want the new guy. The question I leave them with is whether they'd rather take a chance on a discount broker who won't market their house or return their phone calls. It could be a very expensive mistake. Gets me to lesson number 8. The walkthrough is not a break between conversations. Use it. A lot of agents treat the walkthrough like something to get through before the real presentation starts, and it's a mistake because it's one of the most productive 20 minutes of the entire appointment if you're actually paying attention. So I'm doing a couple of things the entire time. First of all, I'm building rapport by asking them to tell me what they like about the house, what they updated, what they're proud of, and what they're going to miss about this particular home. I'm also gathering information about anything that could affect value or come up in an inspection later. I'm taking notes or using my AI recorder because sellers notice when you're engaged with their specific home, and they notice when you're not as well. So I'm noting things the whole time that we're going through the house. By the time we sit back down, I've already adjusted my approach based on what I saw. It could be a complete adjustment on price recommendation because of the condition of the house. It could be a focused conversation about maybe what we need to improve if we want to get a certain number as well, based on what I saw through that walkthrough. It all depends on that particular home and their particular goals. Lesson number 9, listing in the MLS and doing an open house is not a marketing plan. I know I'm going to upset some agents by saying this, but I say this directly to sellers and I mean it. Most agents call that a plan, but it's actually the baseline. It's what every agent does. It's the bare minimum. And if your USP, your unique selling proposition, begins and ends there, you don't actually have a unique value proposition. You're just doing what everyone else does. And like I said, it's the absolute bare minimum. You deserve to get paid the bare minimum as well if that's what you're doing. Your marketing story has to include how you prepare homes for the market, how you reduce stress for the seller during the process, and what you do specifically different to drive buyer demand to your listings. If you can't clearly articulate that in one conversation, well, then you got some work to do before you go on more listing appointments. Get very clear about what you do, how you do it, and how you navigate this process in a unique way than what most agents do. Then be able to explain it to your sellers. Lesson number 10, being a great agent will get you to multiple 6 figures, but being a great business operator will get you to 7. I talk to people about this all the time. I see agents hitting $300,000 or $400,000 a year, and then they stall. And it's usually not because they're bad at real estate, it's because they're not running their business like a business. And $300,000 or $400,000 is a fantastic income. There's no two ways about that, right? Like that's, for most people, a very, very solid income. It's gonna put you in like the top 1 or 2% of earners in the entire United States. But there is so much more possible in real estate. It can literally print money for you if you treat it like a business. And that's what I want to talk about. But if you don't know your conversion funnel, if you don't know your lead source ROI, you don't have the systems that produce a predictable outcome for every client, well, you're leaving hundreds of thousands of dollars on the table every single year. Getting analytical about how many people you're talking to, how many you're meeting, how many you're signing, how many you're closing, and being able to actually optimize those numbers is what gets you through that ceiling, and it breaks you from 6 figures to 7 figures. Everything must have a process, and a defined process gives a predictable outcome. Predictable outcomes scale. Lesson number 11, hire a transaction coordinator before you think you need one. And I'm not talking about hiring a W-2 employee, I'm talking about hiring a per file TC. So a TC handles all the paperwork from contract to close. They typically charge $300 to $400 per file, and you only pay at closing, so it costs you nothing until you actually create some income. Most agents wait way too long to do this because it doesn't feel urgent until they're drowning in paperwork at 10 p.m. Meanwhile, their next deal or their next lead in their CRM stays totally untouched. So stay in your sales lane, hand off the paperwork to a transaction coordinator, make this hire as soon as you can possibly afford it, and put that time back into generating new business. And because again, it comes out of closing, you really can afford this on your very first deal. Get in the habit of doing it. Lesson number 12, Stop prospecting and start attracting. Early in my career, I spent hours a day on the phone prospecting, and it worked. But at a certain point, I realized there was a lot more scalable way to build this business. You can only call so many people in one given day. Video changed everything for me. I tell people all the time that the next best thing to actually meeting with me is watching one of my videos, because when someone calls me, having already watched a lot of them, they already know how I think, they already know what my results are, they already trust me, and I've built authority because they've already consumed my content. Like, this is literally the best possible thing they can do before they ever meet you in person. Of course, they're going to work with you if they've already watched 10 of your videos. This is a completely different conversation than a cold call, and it's really where you want to be. But quick pause here before I keep moving on. Everything I'm running through here, it comes out of our system called the Insider Systems. It's a course that we have available for agents. If you want the full buyer and seller process, instead of one lesson at a time, the fundamentals and the exact step-by-step, it's all in one classroom. You can plug into it today. The link's in the description down below, and it's only $47. Check it out. Back to the lessons. Lesson number 13. Your standards are everything. This applies to the clients you take on or don't take on, the teammates that you hire or don't hire, the agents you spend time with, and the standards you hold yourself to personally. Compromising on any of those is the fast track to mediocre business, and the people around you are either pulling you up or they're pulling you down. There's no neutral, and you cannot hold other people to standards you aren't even holding yourself to first. You have to be setting the example. Lesson number 14. Delegation is not a luxury, it's a requirement. The hire sequence looks something like this, and I've got whole modules on this in our courses. This is the right way to build and scale around your production. After you hire a per file transaction coordinator, the next hire up is an assistant. This is an actual W-2 employee. After that, you want to hire a listing coordinator who handles everything from when you sign the listing paperwork to actually when you get it on the market. This will buy back, 10, 15 hours a week for you easily. After that, a showing partner starts to make a lot of sense. This is someone who takes care of all your buyer clients full time, sits inspections, goes on walkthroughs, sends your clients homes every week, and then of course shows them houses. But if you add those 3 positions slowly to your business, but over time, you can do 100 transactions a year or more, and you have a very lean and cost-effective model. And the goal is to get to a point where you're not only doing the things that you don't like doing, but you're also doing things that make you the most amount of money. The highest dollar producing activities, which is typically setting appointments, it's going on consultations with buyers and sellers, and it's negotiating deals. Most agents love doing those things. They don't love doing administrative work. And just so happens that these things happen to make you the most amount of money as well. So there's full alignment there. You just have to have people around you to do these other things that need to get done. Everything else should be in someone else's hands though. Forget building an enormous team of 20 or more agents. That is the fast track to vanity benchmarks, like selling hundreds of houses a year and profiting next to nothing. We have been there, trust me. Lesson number 15, don't chase a mega team. I just kind of talked about this, but most of the money is actually in your own production. Okay, until you scale past like 300 or 400 homes per year as a team, that team is not really making very much money. Most of that money is being made off the rainmaker, the team owner's personal production. I just touched on this a little bit. I've watched agents build enormous teams thinking that's the path to the biggest income. And then they look up and realize the margins are very thin, the management headache is very real, and they're making less per deal than when it was just them and one assistant. Do not assume simply because you're a really great real estate agent that you're going to be a really great mega team leader. At Keller Williams, where we used to be at, this was kind of part of the culture there. If you were a top producer, automatically you were assumed you're going to build a big team, and that's not really the best way to do things. In certain cases, it makes sense to build a big team, but in most cases, it really does not. Instead, go deep on your own production first, get it running cleanly and profitably, and then add leverage around it very strategically. Don't build complexity before you've built the foundation. Lesson number 16, build income streams that connect back to the same thing. Everything I've added on top of real estate sales connects back to real estate in some way, shape, or form. The mortgage joint venture makes more money off deals I'm already closing. It's helping the buyers I'm already working with. Revenue share comes from agents who find me because I'm already visible in the space. Flips and development deals come from listing appointments where the house isn't quite ready for the market and the seller just wants to get out. New builds come from relationships built through years of transactions. But none of these pull me away from the main thing of being involved in real estate. They all feed off of it, and that's the key importance of this model. You make the main thing exceptional first, and then you look for what is synergistic around it. And when you have 5, 6 different income streams that are all synergistic together, that's when some really fun things start to happen. Lesson number 17. Time management is the thing most agents say they struggle with, but very few actually know how to fix it. The morning is for lead conversion, working your CRM, making contact with these people, That's your highest dollar producing activity. It needs to happen when your energy is at its highest. If you just say, I'm going to do that later every single day, it almost never will get done because something urgent is going to come up every single day. Midday is for working on the business itself, building your systems, making hires, meetings, the stuff that actually moves the machine forward and builds the business, not working the business. The afternoon is for clients, like listing appointments, buyer consultations, and if you're still showing houses, you'd be showing homes in that window of time as well. But the agents who can't break through usually aren't doing anything wrong in any one of these areas. They're just doing them in the wrong order. They're letting one bleed into the other. They take a listing appointment whenever the client can meet. They show a house whenever the client wants to see it. They haven't really segmented their days into the most efficient way to structure it using calendar block. Lesson number 18. Your body is a business asset. You should absolutely treat it like one. When I'm not taking care of my body, I'm not the same version of myself in front of my clients. My energy is lower, my thinking is slower, my confidence is off, and people can feel all of that even if they can't name it. So I hire a coach who runs my diet, they write my workouts, so I don't have to think about any of this stuff. I just follow the plan, show up to the gym, and get to work. Same as I follow every other system in my business. And it works for the same reason every other system works. You don't have to figure it out every day, you just have to execute and do the work. Lesson number 19. You're either learning or you're winning, and both are totally fine. This is a huge mindset shift for most people. When they have a setback, they're very, very hard on themselves. But I lost a business twice, massively, like 7 figures each time before things clicked for me. I didn't net more than $1 million in a year until I turned 35 years old. There were plenty of expensive mistakes in deals and hires and lead sources along the way. If you're early in your career and frustrated that things haven't come together yet, understand that agents who make it aren't the ones who avoided the hard lessons. They're the ones who stayed in long enough to learn them, because you're going to win either way. You're either going to figure it out or you're going to learn something through your mistakes that's going to help you from making that same mistake again. And neither one of those things is a loss. But that's a huge mental reframe for most people. If any of these lessons hit on something that you want to go deeper on, like I said, I've built out full courses on a lot of what I just covered, from lead conversion to the buyer and seller process to building a team. All of it comes from the same 1,600 transactions that produced everything in this video. The links are below. If there's a specific lesson in there that you want me to break down further in its own video, drop it in the comments and I'll put it on the list. See you in the next video.